Chapter 1. Troubled Childhood and Foster Care. They say that we are shaped by our past, that the first years of our lives carve out the path we walk for the rest of our days. If that's true, then I was shaped by a storm, by chaos, by uncertainty, by a deep ache that I didn't know how to name back then. My name was Norma Jean, and from the very beginning, I was never really Norma Jean. I was always a girl caught between two worlds. A girl who didn't have a mother who could hold her, who didn't have a father who could protect her. My mother, Gladys, loved me, I know she did. But she had her own demons, her own battles with her mind. She was a beautiful woman, but she was broken in ways that I couldn't understand as a child. And when I was just a little girl, she was taken from me, taken away to be locked up in a place where no one could hear her screams. And just like that, I was alone. I was shuffled from one foster home to the next, like a doll nobody wanted to keep. Some homes were kind, others weren't. I learned quickly to keep my head down, to try to be invisible, to try not to make waves. But it wasn't always easy. Some people didn't see me as a little girl who needed love. They saw me as a burden. I remember the loneliness, the cold nights in those strange beds, the silence that stretched on forever, the feeling of being unwanted, of not knowing if I'd be there the next day, or if I'd be sent somewhere else. I remember the hunger, not just for food, but for affection, for attention. I wanted to be seen. I wanted someone to tell me I was worth something. But I wasn't given that. Instead, I was pushed aside, neglected, sometimes even hurt. And I began to believe it. I began to believe that I wasn't worthy of love, that I wasn't worth anything at all. It's funny, you know. People look at me now, at the woman they call Marilyn Monroe, and they think they see someone who had it all. They see the beauty, the fame, the glittering world of Hollywood. But what they don't see, what they never see, is the little girl who is abandoned, who is lost in the shuffle, who is told, in so many ways, that she wasn't enough. I spent so much of my life trying to prove to the world that I was worth something, trying to show people that I wasn't just a pretty face, that I had a heart, that I had a soul. But the truth is, I spent most of my life trying to prove it to myself. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be cherished. I wanted to feel like I mattered. But how could I, when I never had anyone to teach me how to love myself? I look back on those days in the foster homes, in the orphanage, and I can't help but wonder how different things might have been if I had been given a chance to grow up with love, with stability. Maybe I would have been a different woman. Maybe I would have been stronger, more secure. But maybe, just maybe, the pain of those years, of feeling forgotten and abandoned, made me who I was meant to be. Because, you see, there's a strength in surviving. There's a strength in enduring, even when the world tells you you're nothing. And while I may have been broken in ways I could never fully fix, I learned how to stand tall, how to smile through the tears, how to shine even when I felt like I was fading away. So, to that little girl who cried herself to sleep in those cold foster homes, I say this: you made it. You survived. And no matter what the world says, you are worthy. You always were. Chapter 2. Failed Marriages and Unhappy Relationships. Love. It's funny, isn't it? The way we chase after it, the way we long for it, the way we try to hold on to it as if it's something we can control. But love has a way of slipping through your fingers, no matter how tightly you hold. I've been married 3 times. 3 times I stood before someone, looked into their eyes, and promised to love them forever. And each time, I thought it would be different. Each time, I thought I had found the one who would finally make me feel whole. The first was James Doherty. He was kind, he was steady, but I was so young, just a girl, really. I thought I could be the perfect wife, the perfect woman. But my heart wasn't in it. I was a dreamer, lost in a world that was too big for me. And when I found my way out, I left. I didn't know who I was, but I knew I wasn't ready to be what he needed me to be. Then came Joe DiMaggio. Ah, Joe, the legend. The man who could have any woman he wanted. And he chose me. But I never felt like I was enough for him. Joe loved me, I know he did, but he loved the idea of me. The woman he wanted me to be, not the woman I was. You see, I was always in the spotlight, always the subject of whispers and stares. And Joe, well, he couldn't handle it. He couldn't handle the way the world looked at me. He couldn't handle the way they adored me. His jealousy was a shadow that followed us everywhere. I would smile, I would laugh, but inside, I felt suffocated. He would hold me tight, but it was a grip that felt more like a cage. The love we shared was passionate, yes, but it was also filled with pain. He couldn't protect me from the world, and I couldn't make him understand that I needed to be free, that I wasn't just his wife. I was Marilyn Monroe. And in the end, that was something neither of us could escape. And then there was Arthur Miller. He was a brilliant man, a writer who saw something in me that no one else did. He saw my soul. He saw my pain. And for a while, that was enough. For a while, we were happy. But as time passed, I realized something. I was still trying to fill a hole inside me that no one could fill. Not even Arthur. Our marriage was full of misunderstandings. He was distant, lost in his own world, and I was lost in mine. I needed someone to hold me, to reassure me, to tell me that everything would be okay. But Arthur, he couldn't do that. He couldn't give me what I needed, and I couldn't give him what he needed. We were two people who loved each other, but we couldn't save each other. I look back on those marriages, those relationships, and I can't help but wonder what went wrong. Was I too much? Was I too fragile, too complicated? Or was it just that I was never meant to be anyone's idea of perfection? I regret the way those relationships ended, yes. I regret the pain, the hurt, the things I said and didn't say. But I also know that I was searching for something. I was searching for a love that would make me feel whole, a love that would make me feel seen. But maybe I was never going to find that in anyone else. Maybe I was supposed to find it in myself. I loved with all my heart, but I was never able to love myself fully. And maybe that's the real tragedy. That I spent so much time looking for someone to complete me, when all along, I needed to learn how to complete myself. So, to the men who loved me and to the ones I loved, I say this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the mistakes, for the misunderstandings, for the things I couldn't give. But I hope you know that I always tried. I always gave everything I had. Even when I didn't know who I was, even when I was broken inside, I gave. And maybe, just maybe, that's all any of us can do. Chapter 3. Affairs with High-Profile Figures. You know, sometimes the world doesn't just look at you. It stares at you. It picks you apart, pieces you together, and spins stories about who you are and who you're with. And sometimes, those stories are more complicated than anyone could ever imagine. I've always been a woman of many layers. What the world saw was the blonde bombshell, the girl who could light up a room with a smile. But underneath all of that, there was so much more. There were dreams, fears, desires, things that no one ever saw. And yes, there were the men. The high-profile figures who entered my life, who whispered sweet nothings in my ear, who promised me something, anything, that would make me feel less alone in a world that always seemed to demand more than I could give. I had my moments with President John F. Kennedy. It was a time of glitter and glamour, of powerful men who had the world at their feet and women who had nothing but their beauty to offer. And in the midst of all that, there was me, Marilyn. The affair, the whispers, the secrecy, it all felt like a dream, a fantasy. But what the world didn't know, what they never saw, was the loneliness that came with it. The secrecy was suffocating. I was never truly seen for who I was. I was just a piece in a larger game, a beautiful distraction in a world that had more power than I could ever touch. And then there was Bobby Kennedy, the brother. The man who carried his own burdens, his own secrets. Our connection was different. It wasn't just about the fame, the power, it was something deeper, something more raw. But even that was tainted by the shadows. The media, the rumors, the questions that followed us wherever we went. People said a lot of things. They said I was just another Hollywood affair, another pretty face who caught the attention of men who had everything. But what they didn't understand, what they never understood, was that I was looking for something more. I wasn't looking for a moment of passion or a fling. I was looking for something real, something that could make me feel whole. But the truth is, those relationships, those fleeting moments, were never going to fill the emptiness inside me. They couldn't. They couldn't fix what was broken. They couldn't heal the wounds I carried from my childhood, from my failed marriages, from the endless search for love that always seemed just out of reach. And as much as I regret the way things turned out, the pain they caused, not just to me, but to others, I also know that I was searching for something. I was searching for validation, for love, for a place where I could feel important, where I could feel seen. But what I didn't realize then, what I know now, is that the more I sought that from others, the more I lost myself. I was never going to find peace in someone else's arms. I had to find it in my own heart. So, to the men I shared those moments with, to the ones who became part of my story, I don't regret the love I gave. I don't regret the passion, the connection. But I do regret the pain it caused, the complications it brought. And most of all, I regret that I never learned to love myself first. That I spent so much time looking for validation in others when the only person I needed to validate me was me. But that's the thing about life, isn't it? We make mistakes, we fall, we love, we hurt, and we learn. And in the end, all we can do is hope that we find the peace we've been searching for. Chapter 4: Struggles with Mental Health and Substance Abuse. You know, they say that fame is a double-edged sword. On one side, it's glittering and bright, a world full of lights and applause. But on the other, it's heavy. It's a weight that you can't shake off, no matter how hard you try. I remember those early days when I was just Norma Jean, dreaming of something more. When I stepped into the world of Hollywood, I thought I was walking into a fairy tale. But it wasn't a fairy tale. It was a pressure cooker. The expectations, the constant scrutiny, the need to be perfect every second of every day. People wanted Marilyn Monroe. They wanted the blonde bombshell, the sex symbol. They wanted the smile, the laughter, the sparkle. But what they didn't want, the thing they never saw, was the person behind the image. The girl who was terrified of being forgotten. The woman who felt like she wasn't enough, no matter how many movies she made or how many men fell at her feet. I was always running from something, running from the loneliness, from the emptiness inside me, running from the pain that I couldn't escape. And somewhere along the way, I found solace in pills. A little something to take the edge off, to numb the hurt. And then came the alcohol, just a drink to quiet the noise in my head. But it wasn't just a drink. It wasn't just a pill. It was a way to hide, a way to disappear for a little while. But the thing about hiding is, you can only do it for so long. The world doesn't stop. The cameras don't stop flashing. The whispers don't stop. And I couldn't stop either. I couldn't stop the spirals in my mind, the constant feeling of not being enough, the overwhelming anxiety that gripped me every time I stepped onto a set or into a room full of people. I tried to keep it together. I really did. I tried to smile, to laugh, to be the Marilyn everyone wanted me to be. But inside, I was breaking. Inside, I was crumbling under the weight of it all. And the pills, the alcohol, they didn't fix anything. They just made it easier to pretend. They made it easier to forget. I don't remember everything. Some days, it's all a blur. But I remember the emptiness. I remember the dark days when I couldn't get out of bed, when I couldn't stop the tears from falling. I remember the loneliness that no one could fill, the feeling that no matter how much I achieved, no matter how much love I gave, I would always be running away from something. And in the end, I couldn't outrun it. I couldn't outrun the darkness that had been with me for so long. I couldn't outrun the hurt, the fear, the constant ache that never went away. My death, they say, was an overdose, a tragic end to a life that seemed so full of promise. But in truth, it was just the culmination of everything I had been running from. It was the result of a woman who never learned how to love herself, how to heal the wounds that ran so deep. I don't know if I'll ever be understood. I don't know if people will ever truly see the person I was beneath the image. But I hope in the end they know this. I tried. I tried to love. I tried to find peace. I tried to be the woman the world wanted me to be. But in the end, I was just a woman, broken, fragile, and searching for something that always seemed just out of reach. And maybe that's the saddest part of all, that I never stopped searching, that I never stopped running.